Okay, well, this is the last video for Lecture 8, The Politics of Business. So when I last left you, I was talking about the Republicans looking to increase business and encourage business. Like I said, we'll talk a little bit more about that in Lecture 9. So we're kind of just wrapping up 8 here. Some things that happened during this time frame, the Harding-Coolidge administrations. There are little bits and pieces of progressivism still working their way through. Remember, progressives want to use the power of government to fix society's ills. Okay? One example here is Prohibition, the 18th Amendment. So this is passed, I think it was just before 1920, if I recall. It's not the exact year; is not important. But for years, there were people trying to. This goes back to the Maine laws of the 1830s. That Americans drank a lot, and of course, drinking leads to spousal abuse, car accidents, cirrhosis of the liver. Lots of bad things can come from excessive alcohol drinking. So there were a lot of people who thought that this could solve some problems. There's a poster there on the left that shows the wife, the mom, and the child. Help me to keep him pure. Vote against the sale of liquors. I like to give you a visual sometimes. Here's the guy. He's a factory worker. He does the same thing all day. It's 9-10 hours a day. He gets just mind numbed. He stops on the way home from work at the bar to get a drink or two, socialize. Drinks too much, goes back home. The wife's going there. Hey, I need money for groceries, and he spent it all on alcohol, and she's chewing him out, and bam, okay, now we got some wife abuse going on here. Lots of bad things can come from overindulging. So a lot of people thought if you could get rid of alcohol, this could help solve the problem. So the 18th Amendment basically prohibits most uses of alcohol. It's the law that actually does it, the enabling mechanism, is something called the Volstead Act. Okay. But the 18th Amendment gives Congress the authority to regulate it, and then the Volstead Act sort of actually set up the exact parameters. So that's the 18th Amendment. There's some pictures here. Here's a bunch of, I'm assuming, probably federal agents, but could be local authorities. They've apparently discovered some illegal alcohol in a basement somewhere. They've pulled the corks. They're running it down the drain, which suggests to be somewhere out there in a lake somewhere. There's a bunch of fish who are very woozy, going, something's happened to the water. Okay. There's a couple of other pictures here. Here are a bunch of men posing around a still, a distiller. A bunch of bottles there set aside. Now, I tell you sometimes that one of the fun things about being a history major is to be able to make informed speculation. I'm speculating that these men are government agents who have caught this illegal operation and have busted it. Now, I don't know that for a fact. I'm just kind of logicking it out. First of all, they're dressed in suits, so they're dressed kind of nice for bootleggers. Second thing, if you actually were a bootlegger and were committing a felony by manufacturing alcohol, you probably wouldn't want to take your picture with the evidence, now would you? Although nowadays people do that kind of stupid thing. They post pictures of themselves on Facebook with guns and drugs, and then they're surprised when this is introduced into evidence at their trial. So yeah, I'm guessing these are probably government agents enforcing their prohibition. Okay? And here's one more picture. Here's an agent breaking up a barrel of whatever it was. Looks like suds, could be beer, with an axe. Okay? So now this is a very well-intentioned law, but it causes lots of trouble. Bootlegging, smuggling, illegal stills, which results in impure alcohol that people drinking get sick, gang warfare, and so this experiment eventually will be rescinded later. There's all kinds of movies about this. So that's the 18th Amendment. Now the 19th Amendment, surprisingly enough, and I don't know why, the guy didn't put it up here on the outline. I don't know if he just had missed it that day. But the 19th Amendment is passed around about this time. The 19th Amendment guarantees woman's suffrage. Okay, or as the people who get all uptight about this say, woman suffrage. I don't know why this upsets them so, but women's suffrage, the right of women to vote. Now, this is a little more complex than it sounds. Okay, uh, the Constitution does not deprive women of the right to vote, nor does it guarantee it. Okay? So when they teach this in the 11th grade class, they probably make it sound really simple that women couldn't vote, and then the 19th Amendment came and women could vote. And that's probably how it's taught in a lot of schools. That's because they have to simplify it to keep from confusing the coach. Now, the truth of the matter is, since the Constitution is kind of silent on women voting, doesn't say they can't, some states did allow it. Particularly some of the states out west that were created much later, late 1800s, early 1900s, and they wrote new constitutions, and maybe they're a little more open-minded towards women voting, because women have been working on this since, the Seneca Falls Convention of 1848, which you read about in the 1301 class. So some states, particularly some rural states where they had very low population densities and they wanted a bigger electorate, some states allowed women to vote. Some states would allow women to vote in local elections, but not presidential. So it was kind of this patchwork quilt. And there were different groups working to solve this problem. One women's group favored a state-by-state approach. They wanted to break it into manageable pieces, and this was a slower process, but they felt they could make more progress this way in the long run, instead of trying to go for the whole enchilada at once. Then there was a rival women's group, mostly of younger women who were tired of waiting, wanted they wanted something done on a national level. So the 19th Amendment was passed. So the best way to say is the 19th Amendment guarantees women the right to vote nationwide, because there was no prohibition against it prior. Okay? So like I said, it was very much on a state-by-state basis. So that's the 19th Amendment. You should know that, even though it's not in the outline. Okay? So once again, this is something the progressives have been calling for. Now, another example of using government power to fix change, in this case is a more negative example, is the immigration restriction. It's immigration restriction, okay, shown here by the National Origins Quota Act. Now, I've seen this act referred to by different names. I don't know what this particular textbook calls it, but it's an act passed in 1924. And what's happening, this is one of the things the KKK was worried about, was too many immigrants coming into the country and not enough controls. Okay? And what do I always accuse immigrants of doing? They're coming over here, they're taking our jobs. Okay? Some of them are from other countries without a strong democratic tradition, different religions than the Protestants and Catholics who basically started the country. And so some people are worried about this. So the act, it's one of the first times it's really put some serious restrictions on immigration. Now, I mean, there'd been the Chinese Exclusionary Act back in the 1800s, but I didn't talk about that in class at all. So National Origins Act basically what it does is sets up a quota system where a certain number of people can come in every year. So they don't try to stop immigration, but they put a restriction on how many people can come in each year. Okay? The idea being that gives you time to absorb them, let them become assimilated, and not overwhelm the system. Now, a bit about the quota is they favored countries that were seen as more like the U.S. Okay? So if you were, for instance, English wanting to emigrate to the United States, you might have an easier time getting in than, say, someone from Africa or Asia, because there are actually quotas how many people come in from this country, in each year. Now, there's two ways to spin this. Okay, there's a kind of a positive way, and there's kind of a negative way. Okay, and the truth probably is somewhere in the middle, and some people probably ascribe to one way or not the other. But I try to be even-handed when I talk about things in this class. Okay? Now, you can certainly paint this as a completely racist idea. We'll restrict immigration to whites. We'll discourage immigration of minorities. Okay, so there's certainly that component of it, and I'm sure a lot of the people who backed this law probably looked at it that way. But you can also put a little more positive spin on it, or a different spin. The idea is we want these folks to come in and become Americans, okay, integrate into our society, chase the American dream, fit in better with us. Okay? And so you could argue that people from countries that already had a tradition of democratic, government, and voting and that sort of thing, might be able to acclimate better and fit in better in our society. So, civilized Western countries. That's not saying that Asian countries aren't civilized, but with societies that are more similar to what's existing in the United States, that maybe these new immigrants could acclimate better and succeed quicker because it would be more like home. So there's a different way to spin that there. Okay. Running out of time, let me see if I can just wrap this up. Summary: welfare capitalism. Basically, the idea is a rising tide lifts all boats. If business does well, people have jobs. If people have jobs, they buy widgets. If people are buying widgets, the widget manufacturers are happy and everybody's employed, and these people all pay taxes. Some people used to sum it up with the idea of a chicken in every pot. But I'm coming up on my 12-minute time limit here. Let's wrap up. Let's just call it a day for Lecture 8. And I'll wrap this thing up, get it posted to YouTube, and get started on 9 here probably soon. Have a good day.